made or received, unless we may agree with different. The speakers I have down is Mrs. Bugle, Sheila Dushler, and Dr. Nicholson. Have you arranged anything else, or no? That's fine. Mrs. Bugle, please. Thank you. I'd like to close the meeting. Please have about 3 minutes. We'll be told in how long you get. Good evening, Chairman and councillors. My name is Carmen Bugle. I actually live at 22 Parliament Close in Oakley Ward, but I'm talking in respect of Turner's Court, which is also in Oakley Ward. I own the flat in Turner's Court, and my mother and my great aunt live there. My mother's 82, my great aunt 97. My main objection relates to visual amenity, street clutter, and in the case of Site 32, narrowing of the pavement. You've seen photographs about the poles sited across the North Circular and in the North Circular. In my view, you can't really compare poles on the North Circular to poles being put into residential areas, because it does have an impact on the residents living in those areas. As you can see, they are visually intrusive. No matter what people say, oh, they can't be seen, they can be seen. They are a blot on the landscape. The one that's going to be sited outside number 32 is next to a tree, as you can see there. That tree is deciduous, so once the leaves fall, the pole can be seen. It's also sited very near to a lamppost and a drop curb, so that actually narrows the pavement quite a lot, making it quite difficult for a wheelchair to go through. The pavement is 2 metres in width. Where it drops, where the curb drops, it's about 1.8 metres. If you then put in the pole, that is going to narrow significantly for a wheelchair to go through. I have had a good look at where this pole could be sited if councillors were minded to grant permission. And there is an area further up, just a little bit further up the road, in front of some fir trees, which will obviously be green all year round, that shouldn't be intrusive to other residents. And they're directly opposite Northumberland Road. And then the other pole could be directly across the road at Northumberland Road. So I would ask the committee to please defer this particular site so that a conversation can be had with the applicants to properly site this, this pole. In terms of the National Planning Policy Framework and the Equalities Act, it promotes sustainability and well-being for all residents, not just the minority of residents. Eruvs already exist in predominantly Jewish areas, and in my view it is wrong to impose this on the whole borough. We are a tolerant multicultural society with many religions, and I think we should respect everybody's religion, not just one religion or 2 religions. In terms of the Equalities Act, the case of Haringey and Ward's Corner tells us the equalities assessment should be the whole area, not just specific sites. This includes religions as well as disabilities, and in my view this assessment hasn't been undertaken correctly for this application. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, looking at that picture on the screen, one senses that the pole and drop curb are not at the same spot, so that the drop curb actually has a much larger impact than the pole does. But would you also accept that before the Hampstead Garden suburb area came in, there was a lot of discussion that the principal will remember about how awful these poles would be. But in fact, I can assure you, and I'm sure Councillor Cohen will give similar assurance, that those who objected have gone very silent since the poles came in. So in fact, it was the anticipation that was much worse, and the reality has actually been welcomed.
Chairman, may I reply to that, please? When the initial era, the first one that ever came to the borough was set up, most of the wires were attached to buildings and existing street furniture. They didn't have poles set up especially for them. And I remember, because I worked for the borough at the time and dealt with it. Now they rely on poles being built or being constructed in residential areas. This particular one, you're right, the drop curve I think is about a metre away, but you come to the pole and then you're almost on top of the drop curve, so that the pavement narrows between the pole and the drop curve, so you're having to sort of manoeuvre around. And it does narrow the pavement at that point. So although the drop curve is not directly where the pole is going to be erected, because it is so near, it does affect the pavement at that site. And what I'm saying, and I'm asking you to consider, if you would, there is a site that would be much better further up the road. And I ask you please to have a look at that and consider that.
Will you accept, please, and I'm sure again Councillor Clem can confirm this, there were a number of new pearls, with one in Cricklewood Lane which caused a lot of controversy. But once it was up, the controversy died down.
There were some, but not as many as there are for the errors that are being put up nowadays. It is very different. And also the legislation has moved on since then. The first one was 20 years ago. We have got the Equalities Act now, and there are other considerations. Planning legislation has moved considerably over the last few years. Councillor Perry.
Do you go through Finchley Central very often?
Sorry?
Do you go through Finchley Central very often?
No, not terribly.
Have you been there?
Not recently.
Okay. Would you take my word for it that there is a pole and wire in Finchley Central?
I would take your word.
And that personally, I've never had one word of complaint or comment from anybody in the borough about that.
That may be the case, but they may not have the same issues that I'm trying to point out here this evening for this particular site. I mean, some of the other sites may be all right, but this particular one does have a problem. And I just feel that if it could be better sited elsewhere, why do we need to accept a site that may be not as good as it could be?
Right. I'm also onto the Equalities Act. I'm trying to understand the point you're trying to make to us. My understanding of the Equalities Act is that it gives councils the duty to take into account the impact on those people with protected characteristics, and if necessary, to give them either priority or discriminate in their favour. In this case, the characteristics are, main characteristics are religion and disability. And in both those cases, everybody accepts that there is an advantage both to people who follow religion scrupulously and also to people within their religion who are disabled. So I don't understand why you say the Equalities Act would count against its application. I would say it's the other way around.
You're quite right in your interpretation of the Act, except that when you say that it affects the disabled, and you're looking also at the religious implications of the Jewish worshippers, you're looking at about 200 people, 300 people, according to the figures of one of the synagogues, of people that will be affected. What the Equalities Act is saying, that you don't just look at them, you look at everybody living in that area. So that when the planners have actually made an assessment, they've made an assessment as to the equalities of each particular site. But that's not how the Act is saying that you have to do it. You have to actually look at the equalities for people living in the area. And that was established very recently in 2010 by the Ward's Corner, Harris against the London Borough of Haringey, where in that case they hadn't actually done an impact assessment in terms of race and in terms of ethnic minorities. And what the court says was you couldn't just look at one ethnic minority, you had to look at the population at large in that area and consider what effect it had on them. And this is the case here as well. You need to look at the whole area, not just the people it's going to help, not just the objectors, it's others living in that area as well. And that's what the Equalities Act say and the Harrogate case.
Councillor Marshall.
You're accepting in answer to Councillor Cohen that the disabled and young children will be able to go to school who would otherwise not be able to go to school. So those two minorities are benefiting. Can you tell me how any minority is being adversely affected?
I'm not saying that you shouldn't help them out. What I'm saying is that when you come to do an equalities impact assessment, you need to consider everybody, not just those people that it's going to benefit the most.
You haven't answered my question. Who's going to be adversely affected?
Well, the people, I think, who have to live with those poles and have to have them cited, then it may affect them in terms of their disabilities. As I've explained, when you walk up the road and cross that pavement and have to manoeuvre a wheelchair, it's not easy. Because what the legislation says and what Transport for London have said is that there should be a minimum of 1.5 metres. That's a minimum, and that only just about makes it. So it is very difficult, and what I'm saying is that you could have the pole but further up the road and it wouldn't have such an effect.
Any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Can I have
I actually gave my position over to one of these ladies, so I'm Sheila Durst.
No, we did ask at the beginning if you had changed your...
But when I sent the email today, I said that I had...
Who are you nominating then?
I'm nominating Oliver. Yeah.
I speak for 6 minutes.
Well, I have to say I haven't prepared anything. Because I gave my position over to 7 people on the email today because there were 11 objectors. I am Totteridge. I'm not really Woodside. So I didn't know that there was an application going in for Barnet, Eruv. So I would have preferred to have spoken on that, but I didn't know about it until late today. And a lot of people on the website didn't know about it either. My husband is Jewish, he's disabled, so I can speak from that point of view. We both wrote letters from a different point of view. I can read you my letter if you want.
If you want to do that, that's fine. We'll have about 3 minutes or so, we'll have a minute.
Regarding the I live in Totteridge. My name is Sheila Durstag. My husband is Jewish and disabled. And in a conservation, the planning and rules appertaining to a conservation area are strictly regulating upon those living there. We can't even have street lighting that doesn't have to be of a certain design. Only one driveway per access. Around the church where there are going to be poles across the road outside Cardinals and over to Eagle House, the Darlings is just behind there, and there are wildfowl. And since the church is 1,000 years old and the graveyard much older, you can bet there are bats all over the place. There are 4 varieties of bats protected in that area. So this wire across the lane where lots of bats and birds fly across will probably be linked up with that church there. You can see the church on the top there. When they go across the green walk at the top of Totteridge Lane, some of them are very long and they will catch up with the I mean, a green walk should be just that. We shouldn't have wire across it that will catch any of the encroaching wildlife that we have in that area. Don't forget, we have a diminishing wildlife. Bees and everything is really going downhill. I'm sorry about this, but I'm not prepared. I mean, after all, the Barnet won a lucrative grant from the Mayor of London to enhance this part of the Green Belt facility. I do not consider a construction of the Eruv to be part and parcel of that process. The poles intimidate me. I don't think they should be on a public footpath. I was brought up Catholic. I am Church of England, and we have other denominations within the family too. So we look at it from all aspects. Sorry about that. This is not what Miliband's One Nation of Cameron's big society is all about. This will not be a wonderful multicultural society all working together. This is a major step in isolating religious and cultural and ethnic groups. UK is thought to be a secular society, one nation. Religious freedom, yes, but not stuffing any one religion down somebody's throat by putting up these obstacles as a street furniture. What next? Who will be allowed to put up what next? That's what you want to think about, the next step. Who else will ask for something on the public footpath? That's all I can say.
You did imply at the beginning that you didn't think an area should go into a conservation area. Is that correct?
I don't think they should, because we have restrictions. I've lived there for 40 years. I've not been allowed a lot of things. My friend lives at Cardinals. She cannot see to get out on the street now. And she's worried about poles being there, creating more obstacles for traffic. It's very dangerous at that point.
Would you accept that Hampstead suburb would claim to be at least as good a conservation area as Totteridge, and that in fact it needed a government inspector to write a very strong report in favour of the area, for the area to take place? So if Hampstead suburb is regarded as suitable for an area, why shouldn't Totteridge be suitable for an area?
Different character altogether.
It's different character. I know that I'm a Londoner. I've lived in London all my life. I've lived in the area all my life. I would say they're totally different in personality, in character.
Totally different.
Everything's more.
Councillor Cohen, yes. Before I ask Councillor Cohen, could I please ask that there is no comments from thank you. Thank you.
We can't hear you. Use the microphone.
Before I ask Councillor Cohen, could I please not have any comments from the public gallery while people are speaking? Thank you. Councillor Cohen.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether the applause for your speech was from the last part, where you suggest that the area would change the character of the area because of the influx of certain religion.
I don't think that's it.
Well, it seems, well, you implied it. Perhaps you could clarify. Before you do, will you take my word for this? That when the first area was proposed, which included the most of my ward in Charles Hill, we had exactly the same arguments put forward there. The fact of the matter is that since that area was put in 20 years ago, the demography of my ward has changed significantly. Not with the influx of Jewish people, but the influx of multinational people of all religions. So would you accept from me that, in fact, your fears about the area are unfounded on the basis of the evidence we have on the very first area that was put in?
I would agree with you, because what is most frightening is the map, the character map on page 42 of Barnet Eruv. That frightens the head out of me. Having that line around all the walls in North London, Barnet.
So what are you frightened of?
Well, these comments by my husband, by the way,
No, what are
and
you
I am
frightened
transparent to you.
What are you frightened of?
Because it looks like you are creating a religious ghetto around the
No,
whole of your
no,
time.
but what's you frightened of?
I repeated history.
Sorry, I'm not imitating.
I didn't hear actually.
That's all.
What did you say? I didn't hear.
But by putting everybody, lumping everybody together within these walls, just is you know, because I'm 70 years old, I remember the aftermath of World War II.
No more questions? Thank you very much. Could you just switch
Sorry?
What's next? Excellent.
There we are. They say many hands make light work. Sorry,
What's next? So you'll have 3 minutes. You'll be told when you have a minute left. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I start now?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Oliver Nathelson, resident of Bryan, Barnet. I represent Coppice Wood conservationists and also the London Wildlife Trust Barnet branch. So I represent about 1,500 members, with many hundreds more supporting the work of our two groups for the environment, each for more than a quarter of a century. We do not oppose the Eruv in principle. We do not oppose the Eruv poles. We do not oppose the posts. We do not even oppose the idea of the Eruv. All we object to is having ultra-thin wires stretched hard between posts next to sensitive sites where wild birds and bats fly. Because it is proven, beyond all reasonable doubt, that when birds fly, say 15 to 20 miles an hour into tight wires, their bones shatter, their ribs collapse, they suffer broken wings, beaks, feet and necks. Swans and geese get severe whiplash. These injuries are confirmed by autopsies conducted on these birds, found dead under all types of stretched wires and across all continents, many countries of the world. People close to Eruvs in America have also reported bird deaths when some Eruvs were first established. You can look it up on the net. When birds strike wires at speed, they fall to the ground in excruciating pain. They're then eaten by scavengers such as foxes, crows, gulls and dozens of rats present in the burrow. So that bird bodies disappear very fast, within hours, leaving no trace whatsoever of these collisions. So we refute, oh no, there's no evidence. The evidence disappears very quickly. Some 25 years ago, the highly respected organisation, the British Trust for Ornithology, showed that over 130 species of different birds were killed when they strike wires and fall down. By now, all over the world, dozens of scientific teams have reported very similar findings, that overhead wires do bring down huge numbers of birds to their death. The evidence is overwhelming, confirming that these large-scale destruction of flying animals.
You've got 1 minute left.
Thank you. The proposed area with its fine, tightly stretched wires close to nature reserves will kill many of our local birds and bats year after year. Swans, songbirds, woodpeckers, ducks, many will perish. Would members of the synagogue really feel comfortable at so much suffering to enable them to extend the Sabbath laws? But there is an answer. All we're asking is that this be deferred, so that we can discuss with the applicants how to make wires more visible and stop the death to birds and bats. You can have wire wires, you can have things on the wires. Scientific evidence shows definitely that 80 to 90% of birds do not suffer injuries, they see thicker wires, things hanging on the wires, and they deflect their flight. These objects attached to wires are called flight deflectors. We've been in contact with the Chief Rabbi. He is responding to our letter. So please can it be deferred? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Nicholson, have you any evidence before us tonight of the impact of the existing areas on Barnet?
No, I don't have, because as I said, the birds fall down and within hours the bodies are removed by scavengers. So it's very difficult to find the evidence. And normally, look, there are 3,000 deaths of people on the roads. How many bodies do you come across? You don't. The bodies are removed. I'm sorry, and even if you do see a dead bird on a road under a wire, you don't put two and two together, you don't report it. So, people do see dead birds. How they died, nobody questions it. So it's not a question that I can answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's not the wire.
Just going to help.
Oh, right. I'm sorry.
All right.